Sure.
we can do that. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely. And Bruce, what is your official title?
I'm Global Brand Manager.
Global Brand Manager. Okay. All right. So when are you ready? We are good to go. Hello, everyone. We have a very special guest, Mr. Bruce Perry, joining us from Scotland, actually England right now, the Global Brand Ambassador for Mossburn, as well as Torabhaig distilleries and Reeves distillery as well. So thank you for taking the time, Bruce. I know it's late over there. Let's get to know you a little bit. I know your second whiskeys just hit Massachusetts yesterday. Alt Glown is what I have, and I also have that in my glass. So I
very nice
to have the share the brand with you and get to know it a little better. But before we get there, please tell us about yourself, how you got involved in the whiskey industry, and let's start there.
Yes, no, I have no idea how I got involved in the whiskey industry. I think that some clever person once said that life's what happens to you while you're busy making plans, and that's certainly true for me. I started working with the person who is now the CEO of Mossburn Distillers nearly 23 years ago. Okay. 23 years ago next week. Wow. And he ran a small cognac, Armagnac importation business. Well, 23 years is a long time. And in the meantime, the company was acquired, and by somebody who was really very, very keen to build a whiskey distillery. And my colleague Neil MacLeod Mattison, whose name you'll see on the bottles, he knew exactly what to do in terms of getting that organized. And I've been there since the very start. I was there in 2014 when the land was bought, and it looked nothing like the distillery you see today. I can tell you that looked like nothing on earth. We'll maybe show you that a little bit later on. In fact, I mean, you can have a look at it now if you want.
We'd love to, yes, of course.
But let me just share my screen with you very quickly. So there we go. That zipped in there nicely. Right. But that's what that is what I
May
saw.
2014. Okay.
May 2014. I was there. I think the mattress had gone by the time I got there in August.
Okay.
2018, but it was a complete swamp. It was the water levels were quite high here, sort of shin height in here. It was crumbling, and these stones, if you put your fist towards the wall, you go right through it. It was very, very old. But I'd been working as the business development manager for this very specialist spirit importation company. And so this coming along was just the perfect match. And I'm very, very happy indeed to have moved to become the global brand manager for Mossburn Distillers, including this beautiful place, which now looks like this.
Okay.
So that's a little bit different.
Quite a transformation.
Yes, took 4 years. We had a stonemason on site for 4 years.
4 years.
Every stone got repointed, or whatever the correct terminology is. That's not my field. Right. But it really was a major artisanal work of restoration. Yeah,
it looks beautiful. The backdrop is stunning as well.
Yes, that's mainland Scotland. You can see back there. Okay. And this here is the ruins of a very old castle called Castle Camas, and that dates back to the 1400s.
Okay. Wow.
That was before Christopher Columbus.
Correct. Is there is there a, pardon my ignorance, but is there a connection between Isle of Skye as far as a bridge, or you have to get there on a ferry?
Yes, no, there are two ways in. There is to the right of the picture as you look at it. If you drive 15, 20 minutes, you will come to the ferry port. And if you turn left as we're looking now, but it would be
Yep.
right, obviously.
Yep.
And about, I don't want to get in trouble with the police here, 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
Then just to be on the safe side, I can't remember how long it takes. You come to the bridge, and it's not a very big bridge because it wasn't a large expanse of water that needed crossing,
Right.
but it's very convenient now. So if you, for example, flew into Inverness Airport, 2 hours, 20 minutes, you'd be driving in here, looking at this view here that you see now.
I see. Okay. So there's another small distillery on this island called Talisker. How how far would that be from this distillery, Torabhaig?
50 minutes, 50 minutes drive.
I see. Okay. And what about the population of this island? Are there?
It varies. It's not very much in the winter, and it's an awful lot in the summer. So it is very, very busy in the summer. But in the winter, it's a very, very quiet place. We're talking a few thousand rather than a few 100,000.
I see. Okay. And is there other industry or other sort of occupation that people indulge in there, as well as farming or livestock?
Absolutely.
Or something like that?
Farming, fishing, but I would say that tourism is what really gets it done. That is the big industry. It is very seasonal, as you can imagine. It's practically daylight all day in the summer, and practically the opposite in the winter.
Okay.
So a lot of these places close down for a few months every year. But in terms of other big industries on the Isle of Skye, tourism.
Okay.
Which explains the influx in the summer months, work and so on and so forth.
Right. Fantastic. So let's talk about, before we get into the actual bottlings, Mossburn. Mossburn is how we were introduced to the company initially as an independent bottler. And we are, independent bottlers are very close and near and dear to our heart. Whether it's Cadenhead, Gordon MacPhail's, we talked about Creative Whiskey Company, the exclusive malts, and Signatory, and so on and so forth. And when Brian came with the Mossburn to us, it was very exciting. And it was slightly different than some of the other independent bottlers in the sense that most of the expressions were blends of about 10 casks. They were not single casks. And there were two expressions. It was, I think, at 46% ABV, and the other was batch strength. So beautiful whiskeys, and we carry all of them, and we had great success. People have responded to them very well. And then at that time, he had mentioned that there might be 3 distilleries coming online. But let's talk about Mossburn and understand what the philosophy behind it is.
Mossburn Distillers and Blenders is the parent company. They essentially are the parent company of the distillery at Torabhaig. They're also the parent company of the Rivas distillery in the Lowlands, and there is potentially a 3rd distillery in the future. The time will tell, but we have the land. We have the land for that, in the sort of Jedburgh, Melrose area. Mossburn Distillers and Blenders are also, as it says on the tin, blenders of malt. So we produce a Speyside and an Island blended malt, which we finish in our own hybrid casks. So for the Speyside, we take Oloroso sherry butts, we take the heads off, and we put virgin white American oak at heavy char heads. This helps accentuate the natural inherent Speyside characteristics in the whiskey. It's given us a richness. We get color, coconut, vanilla from the heads. We get yes. Well, they're not bourbon. They're virgin.
Virgin American. Okay.
They are the barrels that bourbon would go in, but that's just the heads because it would be too much otherwise.
I see. Are they charred or toasted?
Heavy char heads.
Heavy char heads. Okay.
And
that's Corpus Alba specifically.
Yes, that is correct. And then we have sherry wood staves. So that gives us some sherry, it gives us some nuttiness, it gives us some sweetness. And this is between 9 and 18 months now, and then blend for a second time. And that's the Speyside, which is a really, really well-made example of a everyday whiskey, as indeed is the island, but it's made fractionally differently. So the whole process is the same for the island. And when we say island in Scotland, we mean peaty, we mean smoky. That was the source of fuel that was available on the islands.
Right.
If we're going to make a whiskey called the Island and not peat it, we'd have to call it unpeated, so people would know. But this time for the hybrid casks, we took first fill bourbon casks, took the heads off, and we replaced those with virgin European oak at heavy toast. European oak toasted is a lot more subtle than American oak charred, as is the first fill bourbon staves. And so the point this time was to bring some finesse, some elegance to something that might otherwise have been a little bit rustic. Same thing again, 9-18 months blend that second time, and we have the island whiskey. So these are our two really high quality everyday whiskies, I would say. And
just a question on the blends, blended malts. The Speyside, how many different distilleries constitute?
Well, we I think on the very first blend we used about 4 distilleries each time, but it's between 3 and 5 generally speaking. But they can vary. We're really aiming for a sort of character. How you get there is really, at the end of the day, I don't even know what's in there, because we blend the first time, we put it into these hybrid casks, we take it out after 9 to 18 months all mixed up, and we blend again. Now what's the proportion in there? I really don't have a clue. Right.
So by the nature of how you're doing this, there will be little variation from batch to batch.
I think that you probably could find some batch variation. It's
yes, okay. The bandwidth is very, very narrow. The band is very narrow on
it is, because the sort of recipe, if you like, is one designed to prevent that from happening. Yeah. Okay,
fantastic. And on the island side, is there any Isla too in there, or is it mostly other islands?
There's Isla and Orkney in there. And there may well be some Skye in the future, but that would be that would be ours if that was the case. But we'll see.
Correct. Okay, fantastic. And then in addition to that, you also have some single malt expressions.
We do, but that's a very straightforward thing of independent bottling. Yes, we buy and we bottle. We have also we're also introducing some finishes in future years. They won't be seen stateside for some time, but for now, when we were doing those bottlings, we wanted to show the world, this is before Torabhaig got launched, we wanted to show the world how we were going to behave, what sort of people we were going to be. And we're whiskey fans making whiskey for whiskey fans. And so what do whiskey fans want? Well, apart from whiskey, obviously, information. And we wanted to be very transparent and explain to people what we were doing. And so on the label of those casks, there's everything you need to know.
A lot of detail. Yeah, very impressed by not only the Mossburn, but also Torabhaig. It's amazing the level of information that you are willing and you're sharing very gladly right on the label, which somehow many of the other distilleries either don't know or they're unable to
Well,
disclose?
I'm certain they know it.
No.
But
Well, maybe the ambassadors may not have the knowledge about the yeast strains
oh, I see.
or
I see.
something along those
Oh,
lines. And certainly on the ppm level and the bottling, I don't think, with the exception of maybe ANOC has done it, or maybe one or two other distilleries, many even disclose as to what the ppm might be at the after distilling or at the time of bottling.
it's quite a pain to put the residual, as in the bottling ppms, on there, because you have to send a bottle off for analysis and wait for the analysis to come back before you can finish up the back label. So I can well understand why people wouldn't do it.
Right. It's not really that easy. It's not practical unless you have a lab right in the distillery.
It's we like doing it because we want to know, and we as we said earlier, within reason, we want to tell everybody everything. So we're very happy to be able to do that. But yes, I think it's just another little thing in the way of getting those bottles out there. So I'm pleased to see it behind you there, I must say.
Right, correct. So let's talk about Torabhaig, starting maybe with the still itself, or maybe the mashing or mash tuns, or even the barley varietals, because
I think this is the inside of the distillery. And I think just one thing to say is, if we go back to this picture here, the building was protected by law.
I see.
And because it was a very old building, it was 200 years old, but some of the stonework had been taken from that Castle Camas that you saw there, dating back to 1400s. And so when we restored it, we weren't allowed to go any higher than the apex of this roof here. The length, width, height of the building were established. We couldn't go down. That's the sea. And so whilst we are obviously very much involved in designing this distillery, when said and done, the stills we designed had to fit inside that building.
There was a limitation.
And I love that part of it, because this old building talks to us today through the whiskey. It's playing a part, because as you can see, we used every square inch the good Lord gave us to put this still in. And this is one of the things we run: long fermentations, between 60 and 130 hours, and we run slow distillations with about 3 hours 15 minutes for a 900-litre heart. But the key to this is the contact with the copper. The more the vapors, the longer the vapors spend in contact with the copper, wherever that is in the chain, the more you break down the sulfur that's inherently in the beer, or in the wash. And this allows you then the opportunity to make a very elegant whiskey, and that was what we wanted to do. So by taking a short 4-shot run, 15 minutes, by taking a high cut point, 64%, high cut point for a peaty whiskey, we make a very elegant, very fine interpretation of peat. And this was our interpretation of an Isle of Skye whiskey. We used the beauty of the Isle of Skye as our muse. It is very beautiful, but in a very rugged sort of a way, in a very robust way. It is not Caribbean beautiful, the gentle sea lapping up against a warm beach. It is elemental. And so the ruggedness came from a very, very high in-grain phenolics. The finesse came from running everything very slowly and cutting high. And this is why our whiskey is the style that it is today, and why, after only 4 years, you have got something drinkable in that bottle.
Right. Well, I shall take a sip.
Good idea. The sun's over the yard arm here.
Yes, it is. Glad it's out today. So talking about the still, I can't see the line arms, how they are angling.
It's not a picture for that.
That's okay.
They're not elephant trunks, that's for sure.
Okay.
They're not parallel to the ground either. There is ever such a slight slant on them, but yeah, they're fairly flat.
So that's giving it even more of a copper contact, and perhaps it's not as oily because of that as well.
Yes, I mean, all of these things, you can't just take the one thing out and say that's the reason there, but all of these things combined, and then we use shell and tube condensers that gives even more copper contact.
Right.
And so, yeah, if we wanted a really oily, heavy, maybe even medicinal whiskey, we would run those stills a lot quicker, and we would cut lower.
Mm-hmm. And I see that you're not using steel, but using wood.
Yes, you'd think with my elegant, fine whiskey that I was describing that stainless steel would be the thing, and
right, more control.
That building was just too old. It deserved a bit of tradition, and so that's what it got. And I have to say, we're very, very happy with these wooden washbacks. They will be giving us something that stainless steel doesn't, but what that is, I couldn't tell you because we don't have any stainless steel.
Right. And what sort of wood is that made from, those washbacks?
That is the hardest of the softwoods. That is Canadian Douglas fir.
Canadian Douglas fir. Okay, fantastic. Very good. So when we talk about the fermentation, both these expressions have different. One has only one, I think, a yeast strain.
Yes, this is the back label for the 2017, the first one, and that's the Pinnacle NG plus yeast. And then this is the back label for the Alt Glown, and that's Pinnacle NG and Saf Spirit M1 yeasts.
And I also noticed that is 77 ppm phenol in the malt. Yeah, for the Alt Glown. Glown, is that how we say it?
Alt Glown, yes. I mean, Alt Glen, if people want to say Alt Glen, that's fine. It means the valley burn, the valley brook, if you like. And if you look at the distillery to the left-hand side, that is where the Alt Glown is. And it's one of our water sources. So you're actually drinking that as well.
Okay. Very good. So, so 77 ppm phenol. Where's the peat coming from? Is that?
Is Aberdeenshire peat.
Aberdeenshire. Okay. All right. Very good. So, what made you experiment? What drove these almost like a hybrid fermentation?
The yeast you're talking about?
Yes, please.
Well, there's a lot of experimentation to be had, and they gave varying degrees of fruitiness and what have you, and we were just trying out different ones because it stands to reason when you open a distillery. When we walked in January 2017, you don't just flick a load of switches, collect the whiskey at the end of the day and shake hands with everybody and say that went well, didn't it? See you tomorrow. Well, I mean, you do, but you have to fine tune what you're doing over a period of time, and over quite a long period of time, sort of 9-18 month sort of period of time of looking at different things and how they work and so on and so forth. And so this was one of those aspects. In fact, what we're doing is we're going on a journey of discovery, of what different things we did, how they worked, how they panned out, a journey of discovery for our distilling team, a journey of discovery for the plant. How did it react to the barley we put through it and the things we did? What did it generate? And so, like I say, it took 9-18 months to finally say, yes, that's it. We're happy here now with what will become Torabhaig 10-year-old. And so what we're asking you now and your customers to do is come on that journey with us just 4 years after we did it, because that's how long it takes to make a whiskey.
Right.
So you'll get to see all the different things that we did. So the Alt Glown is the current incarnation. There will be 6 tranches of this over Oh, I was going to say over 2.5 years, but unfortunately, with all the problems in the world at the moment, I think we may end up being about here by the time Alt Glown bites the dust.
Right. So those are going to be, pardon me, those are going to be 6 different expressions released in the.
No, 6 tranches of the same thing.
Okay.
So the casks will be the same. Everything will be the same. It's just that the same way you make a 10-year-old. You don't make all the 10-year-olds for eternity on one afternoon. You're always making it, and it's just a follow-on through. And that 10-year-old tastes the same all the time. May see a slight batch variation with Alt Glown, but I doubt it because it's small batches. So there'll be 6 incarnations of exactly the same thing. And then the plan was January 2024 that we would have a new expression in the same way that Alt Glown took over from the 2017, and that would be called Crochnamonia. That means the hill of peat, and that's one of the hills that you could see.
I see. Okay.
The water. And we're going to put a little bit sherry cask in this one. And then a couple of years after that, the Alt Breich, and that means the speckled burn. And that's another of our water sources, comes in the same way. They join up together, these 2 brooks, burns, whatever you want to call them. And we're going to put a little bit Madeira cask in that one. And by the time we've done all of that, the journey to 10-year-old will be concluded.
Right. So
that's what they're going to look like.
Right. Okay. So the next 2 examples, are they going to have different set of barley and yeast strains too?
The barley will probably be the same. The barley will probably be laureate.
Okay.
I don't imagine that could change now. The barley will, the yeast will change. I don't know exactly when it will change in that line there. We need to have a look at the barrels we're going to use, but we are currently using Anchor. So at some point in time, you'll see us morph into the Anchor yeast, and that's really working well for us. We're very
Anchor yeast.
Very,
so that's happy. The 3rd yeast that you're introducing.
That's
yes.
right, and there may be another one in there as well. I can't remember now off the top of my head.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we will see.
Right. So concerto yeast is going to get phased out, it seems like, by the 3rd iteration. Concerto barley. Yeah.
Yes. No. That is exactly right. That is being realistically. That has been phased out. Yes.
Has been phased out.
Okay. Certainly from an operational standpoint today.
So what happens? I mean, the first expression that was the only,
concerto and laureate.
Exactly. Laureate was there as well.
Sorry.
It was only concerto.
That's right. No, concerto the first time, concerto and laureate the second. Then I think they find that we're just laureate next time or the time after. I don't quite know when that's going to.
Sure. No worries. So what happened? So this particular one is gone forever, or are there going to be other iterations being
gone
released?
Forever?
Gone forever. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. It's just that you felt that this the second combination was
no with the barley. I mean, yes, we're interested, but the barley is the barley moves on, and the current strain of barley that everybody is growing is laureate. So to suggest that was somehow part of our experimentation would be probably a little bit misleading. Of course, there may be some changes when laureate came in. But laureate was going to come in whether we said anything or not.
I see. Okay.
We are playing around with some old grains, but that is our choice. But they won't feature in regular Torabhaigs. They will feature in special releases in the future. But the concerto laureate move was an industry one, not a Torabhaig one.
Okay. So basically, the main casks we're using are essentially ex-bourbon, sherry, and Madeira at the tail end.
Ex-bourbon and refill, I would say, is the real feature of it, and you'll see some refill in the Alt Glown there. But the sherry will feature. I don't know what sort of proportion that's going to feature in. We'll have to have a look at it when the time comes. But obviously, the sherry, you need a big whiskey to sherry it for its life. And so that's not what we make. We make a fine elegant, fragrant whiskey. So
Right.
we don't want the guts knocked out of it by a sherry cask,
Mhm.
but a little bit might go a very long way. So we need to wait a
It may
couple
be a
of years.
blend of
Well, I don't know. You may come back to me in a couple of years' time and say "So you only used 5% sherry cask in the Croc Pneumonia," and
yeah,
that I'm making this up, of course, because
of course, yeah.
far too far away for us to have any idea
Mhm.
exactly what those proportions are going to be. But it'll
Right.
be interesting to find out. But I think that the sheen, the fruit, the character, a little of that will go a long way. And if
Mhm.
you do much of it, I think we may find that we lose some of our DNA, if you like.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
But we'll see. Who knows? And you can come back and say, "See, you don't know what you're talking about."
It's lovely to be able to have this conversation, uh, which is going to extend to 8 or 10 years down the road. Looks like getting to the 10-year-old Torabhaig. So let's move on to the other distillery, which or potentially two distilleries, and that is very fascinating in the lowlands. What can you tell us about Rivas?
Well, the Rivas distillery is uh, it has a hybrid still at the moment. We're currently making a rye whiskey, so we'll see what happens there. And
Okay.
that will be for sale in about 2024, I think, something like that. But it's
Okay.
small quantities at the moment, so I don't know
Mhm.
if that will make it stateside in 2024. And it is also where we blend and bottle all of the Mossburns. So the Rivas is a very, very interesting distillery. It's a little bit more rebellious than our traditional single malt distillery at Torabhaig. But hopefully there are plans afoot, and hopefully they may come to fruition in the future for a lovely area in the lowlands to feature the Rivas distillery, some aging warehouses, and with a fair wind, a single malt distillery too. But those plans are a long way off, and it remains to be seen exactly how, when, if they come to fruition. But it's
Mhm.
exciting times. It's an exciting project, and the Rivas could be an awful lot of fun. So that would be a single grain, but it wouldn't be a single malt. And the Rivas won't be able to make a Scotch single malt distillery because that has to be made in a copper pot still, and that's the one thing we haven't got. So
All right, right,
a
right.
hybrid still, and really making some interesting stuff.
Interesting stuff. And can you talk about that as to what you're making there, or what?
Just
What
the rye whiskey.
rye whiskey?
Yeah, that's all we have been currently distilling there. We're going to look at some other grains as well in the future, but for now we are just working on rye whiskey.
Okay, so when somebody talks about rye whiskey, especially in the US, you're talking about a mash bill of 51%, minimum 51% rye, and then other 49% can constitute any of the other cereal grains, if you will. Is that the same philosophy that
Yeah,
Riva has?
you need to get your enzymes from somewhere. Now you
Right.
can get them from malted rye. There are 100% rye whiskies
Mhm.
out there.
Yeah,
Mashing those is very, very hard work.
correct.
So we're in the experimental stage still at the moment of using various different methods, so barley and
Mhm.
malted rye and so on and so forth.
Commercial enzymes is one option, but it's not.
That is also an option. It's not currently one we're exercising.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so there'll be a small percent of potentially a malted barley
Correct.
component in there. And what about, so obviously, we know, does rye also come in different yeast, I mean, different strains? I mean, there are different varietals of rye. I mean, is that something?
Right now, we are using the only one we've got, and I must tell you off the top of my head, I can't remember what that one is called.
Mhm, mhm.
But from a distilling point of view, it's not. I mean, in America, it's probably very different, but in Scotland, distilling rye is not the most normal thing in the world.
Right.
We're getting that from Simpsons at the moment. That's working very well. But no, we're just working. We're not experimenting across strains at all.
Mhm. But definitely yeast strains. You're using maybe um, uh, is the same kind of yeast strains, or are you experimenting with that as well?
Well, we've kind of done some of the experimentation at Torabhaig. And so whilst it's a very different grain that we were working with there, we kind of learnt a lot of lessons in terms of different yeast strains, but some of the fruitiness that you get from some of them, like I say, this is going to be ready in about 2024. That's 3 years away. So we're still making that very first batch that's going to come out. Right. So what I will do for you when that time comes is plot the journey of all of these different curves that we've been on, and we will know then what we're actually putting in it out of all of those different things that we've made at that point. But yeah, we've been tasting it against a lot of different ryes and really trying to get to the bottom of what it is, and will this make a good Manhattan, or will this be a nice sipping rye, or will this be that, and this is this one here and that one there, and trying them all and seeing, right, okay, because the one thing it won't be like is the sort of big American rye whiskies in their new oak barrels and so on and so forth. It will be very much a Scottish rye whiskey from a point of view of using refill barrels and so on and so forth. So at the moment, the way we've plotted Torabhaig is not plotted for the Reva's rye, but when it is, I'll let you know.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Bruce, this has been really fascinating. Would you like to add anything else for our viewers that to expect, or what we should know?
I think with regard to Torabhaig Old Glown, I mean, the problem is that if we're ever going to get to a 10-year-old, there is only so much whiskey that we can release. And it's not just 10-year-old. From day one, you're making 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 21-year-old, 25-year-old, 30-year-old. And so you've got to keep these to one side. So it does limit in the early days how much we can release. A lot of people will not have tried 2017. The majority of people will not have done. We're sorry about that, particularly people who really wanted to try it.
Right.
With the Old Glown, we've got these 6 tranches being released over a period of time. So that means that for people who didn't get to try it, maybe the first one, they come into a store and they don't get it, there's another one coming, and there's another one coming, and there's another one coming. And so hopefully we'll get a lot more people to try Old Glown, and particularly the curious whiskey aficionados who are really interested to see that. Right. When we get to Croch Pneumonia, there'll be even more, and there'll be incarnations of that as well. So 4, I think, tranches planned, 4 tranches of Old Breich when that time comes too. So we're trying to produce it in a way that allows as many people as possible to try it within the limitations that we have of not being able to sell so much.
Right. So for Old Glown, these will be pretty much slightly different age statements, or sort of chapters, right? The next release. So we did get this one.
10% of it. 10% of it might get fractionally older.
Okay.
So the first lot of barrels go down, and they're earmarked for Old Glown. They're followed by the next lot of barrels, which are, at the minute they land in the aging cellar, a fraction younger than the first ones. But by the time we come to bottle them, they've now caught up, and so on and so on and so on. And they had the same ppms in grain, they had the same yeast, they had the same fermentation time, they had the same distillation method, etc. So they should be identical.
Okay. Just like for example, Talisker 10-year-old.
Well,
similar,
If you have a look at any of these big name 10-year-olds, and they taste the same today as they did yesterday, as they will do tomorrow. And that's, now admittedly, we're a much smaller batch. And admittedly, 10% of each one will get fractionally older. But I don't think you'll see a difference between batch 1 and 2, between 2 and 3, between 3 and 4. But you might see one between 1 and 6. But I don't know, because we haven't got there yet.
Right.
And we're not batch numbering them.
Okay.
Again, we're trying to get as many people as really want to enjoy a bottle of our whiskey.
Okay. Fascinating. Thank you so much. This was a beautiful, enlightening conversation. I look forward to having many more of these, and also hopefully next time we can have it with the rest of Norfolk Wine and Spirits and Norfolk Whiskey Group crew.
That would be nice. It'd be nice to be there in person one day.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you
a great day. Appreciate your time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.